Oh, did I send you the new?
There's not much change in it. It's just one line.
I thought there was a significantly shortened version that's kicking around.
Not the one that
There
you
is.
gave.
I don't know where it is. I have it, but I can't find it.
Yeah, well, he sent me this as the updated, and what it has done is it's got a date to this, so, a different date. I would just like to establish that we have a quorum.
Mhm.
And then do so, I am going to read the script for remotely conducted meetings. As a preliminary matter of this, Dorothy, Chair of the CRC, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Linda, Bert,
Here.
John,
John here.
Veronica, here, Dorothy here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jericho, Ann, here. Anticipated speakers, we will have none. Good morning. This is the open meeting of the Contract Review Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. The meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting of the CRC is conveying by video conference via a Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. It's a hybrid meeting, just to be clear, because that doesn't say it here. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by, not all, some are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured in the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After we conclude the remarks, the chair will go down to the members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. And the items for public comment we will not address. Could I please get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Bert,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Veronica? Aye. Aye. Okay, first we have the 2020, the two reports in front of you, the cannabis and the human service grants. And they're up for approval. Have you guys read this? Yeah. Oh. Somebody else again. Okay. All right. So cute.
I move to approve the human services grant agreements and the cannabis grant agreements for
Great.
2024.
Okay, we
Second that.
okay. Veronica,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
I have to thank you for your hard work on that stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
thank you, Linda.
And you could just see how much work there is.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was interesting, you know what, I'll be honest with you guys, it was very, very interesting, and I think the biggest thing, there were a few things that came about between the two researches. One was, going back to 1990, then you go 1990 to 2000 census. And where in the US Census, you know, first page of the Cape Cod Times was the fact that Nantucket had grown the largest in any town in the state, right? Any county in the state.
Yeah, I remember
And-
that.
And then they wrote about the fact that there was some, concerns, and you go 20 years later, you go 10 years, and then you go 20 years later, we continue to be the largest county growth at 52.2% growth, okay? When you look at that, those numbers in growth, and it has to be, for me, what I looked at was, I had a long conversation afterwards with some town management about this, but we can't make up for 20 years of not paying attention. And we haven't paid attention for 20 years. And no matter how much money you put into it, we're never going to do it. And the key really is, in my opinion, we have to do something about development. Because if we don't, we can't sustain everybody that's coming. And you can't sustain this, if you read, like, I can't tell you, wait till you see all the attachments that are gonna come with the first one. But all the articles and going into towns across the country. We've had, when we rank 44 for Hispanic in the state. That's 44, and everybody above it are all cities. All cities. So when you start thinking about, or there's schools that are clearly just actually like charter schools that are just going to a certain demographic. And you take a look at the impact that has in cultural change, in economic, the whole system of it. No town, no matter what, can sustain this kind of change so fast without having had a master plan in place. And was no master plan in place to cover this. And so it's interesting to see, because when you take every school district on the Cape, every school on the Cape, we are like 18% above the next school below us. And that is Oaks Bluff as at the elementary down. Otherwise, I mean, Barnstable, they're like 27% below us. And it's insane when you take that ratio of how that change and how fast our change has come into the community, that we have been saying this for 5 years in our report. We have said we cannot sustain this. Human Services can't sustain it. Nothing can sustain it. And yet nobody, and they'll say to us, court's great, more information in here. And for the first couple of board of selectmen meetings, a couple of them will go after the fact that we have to do something, but nobody's actually paying attention. And when you look at the changes, like in ratio to the whole country, we have one of the highest changes in the whole country. And so when you really look at that, I mean, how can we not stop and restart thinking how we're doing things? Because we cannot sustain everybody that comes around. The water system won't take it. The infrastructure can't take it. There has to be a plan, because what's happening is you're also losing. We're losing members of the community that are the ones that built the community, that understand it, that also have the long-term commitment or had it, but can't stay any longer. And it's really like this sort of did it in. And then the other thing that came about was in doing research for the cannabis grant. It was very interesting. A lot of the information, especially the new information coming out about cannabis and the effects on the teenage brain. That was really interesting. I'm looking forward to see where that study goes that they're working on. One of the factors that I went to was WGBH in 2017 did this TV series. I have to tell you that is an amazing, first and foremost, I don't understand why we all didn't know about it. And it is unbelievable.
And that was something you could pull up and watch?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
and listen to it. It's an audio, you can listen to it.
Okay.
It was unbelievable that we were looking at that at that time, but I think the research in here is something that validates the concerns of why we're looking at prevention. Because in actuality, it was pretty much everything we talked about. No matter what, you have to start educating young and providing things at a younger, and how much that it has changed. I mean, we all knew this, but the actual studies that are doing on MRIs that are looking at the brain function now of all of them, and this one study, so they've never been able to do studies on the brain of a teenager because it can be invasive.
Mhm.
And they can't start it in the middle because they don't know the baseline of where it started. So they have, it's roughly 12,000, it's like 11,799 kids that they're following, and they're following them through every single phase, and every child along the way has not, some of them, they started a while ago, so some of the kids are, I made an error in there, I should say that 2000 is when I say it started, it actually started 2015, it got re-granted with $23 billion or so, like amazing amount of money to continue this for the next decade, to monitor it, because the only monitoring they've ever really been able to do has been the monitoring of a rat brain.
Right.
And so now they've started the human brain, and the MRI is an imaging that they actually have been able to do and take like a normal teenager's brain and go to somebody that is using cannabis and alcohol, but they've done a major one on the cannabis. But it's interesting to see that these factors show some of the issues that are happening, some of the issues. The other part of the issue is actually a demographic change and understanding, so it was interesting. And what I found interesting is, on my own discovery, is that with Massachusetts state law too, a destruction of public property is a federal and state offense. So why aren't they using that as a guiding tool when they're talking to kids? And I don't mean it meanly, but I mean in the sense that when you understand that what you're doing is actually violating a law, because if we went in and did that to the toilets, we would get in trouble, right? So understanding that there's a line that you cross too, when you're making your actions, whatever your actions are, we have to be careful because it is public property. Yeah, it's just interesting because, and I'm not one to say, I'm truly one that always believes in that, yes, I think that everybody should be held accountable, but I love community service for the action of it. But I'm just saying that I just feel that we look at things, had any of us at this table gone in, you cannot destroy public property. State and federal laws don't allow you to do so. So why aren't we talking about all the ramifications of it? It's not just this, but in a general understanding, when you do things, there's a domino theory, right? And I think sometimes we tend to say that there's one way of prevention, but there's all these ways of teaching people what you can and cannot do throughout the process, right? It's not only about drugs, it's about the care of a property. It's about understanding and respecting the things in front of you. So when I read it, I was like, you know what, we are missing one tool in here. We keep trying to, by saying that we want to protect them too. And, I'm a mother of 6 kids and I've had umpteen foster kids, and I've been a safe haven for the police department I was for 20 years. So kids were always at my house. But the law is the law, right? And we all try to find ways to make them understand it and understand the ramification of breaking a law as well as we go through life, right? So that was one of the things when I went through this, because there's so much you actually read to put this together and be able to say, this is where we are and this is what we believe. And this is why we're standing behind these things. So anyway, good. Okay, Veronica.
On the first point of our services are stretched to the breaking point, I think that there's been enough, well, not enough, there's been conversation and there's been press about fire, police, those services, the infrastructure, but there hasn't been any conversation about the effect of overcrowding or stretching to the limits with human services. So I don't know how we can get that conversation going, and maybe inviting the press to examine this with us, and maybe we can start getting information out there.
I think it's also them. I think it's also inviting more of the members of the Board of Selectmen and to see what we're actually seeing and to see, like, actually sit down. And maybe, you know, I think it's everybody. It's planning development, it's the police, it's the fire department. It's absolutely everybody sitting down and seeing what we're seeing on the other end of this too, because it's clearly it's gonna continue, right? And it, unless we do something, it's gonna continue. And how are these services going to be? Oh, I mean, when you think about it, right? The nurse practitioner at Health Imperatives sees 825 individuals. That's amazing for one person. I want you to, you know, like, let's think, how many doctors actually see that many? And she does that in 2 days a week. And like picks up calls and calls her patients back, you know what I mean? So how do we understand that that's one? We would say to a doctor here, that's a lot of patients. But then she sees the patients 3 days a week at the hospital. Right. So when you start looking at the numbers of people getting served within this, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you're right. And Jericho has his hand up, so. Yeah.
I think also we could be making the case that the population of the island has clearly increased. We know that the census number is a lower bound. It's probably
Right.
more of an increase than that. Yet human services budgets have remained largely flat during this time, despite the fact that individual services are increasing in cost to deliver as well. I think that if we make the argument both that human services should increase purely based on the increased numbers of people who require their services, and then the most efficient way to intervene in someone's life from a financial and emotional trauma point of view is before they have a problem. And we need to be pitching these services as what you do instead of public safety. That this is preemptive public safety spending, and that it's more efficient for us to deliver services and provide assistance before there's a problem. I could drown anyone in references showing that economic inequality, nutritional insecurity at early age, and early childhood trauma through unsupported externalities cause 1,000 times more problems than down the line. If you go to punishment or criminal justice or intervention or crisis intervention, you've already wasted 70% of the potential savings on doing this. I really wish I'd been able to make that line a little bit better at the FinCom meeting, but I do think that we have to stop viewing this human services contracts as being aid for people who are in trouble, but as preemptive interventions in the general public safety of Nantucket. And we need to sell them like that, because public safety issues and that seem to get better traction around the town. And I think it's just better and more convincing if we start using that line of being, this is what we do before there's a problem. And if we spend our money here, $175,000 here will equate to several $1 million worth of police spending down the road.
Oh, yeah, we're not at that discussion with them.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Sorry.
We will get to that.
Yeah.
Don't worry. So anyway, yes, I think it's a very good idea. I think it has to become a much more public conversation, but with all of the shareholders. And I think it would be, maybe this is what, Jericho, that we should invite all the stakeholders that are going to get monies to the table with us on how we can make this a bigger thing. I do have to correct a statement here, though. In the last 3 years, Jericho, we've got a $200,000 increase from the town of Nantucket in human services. So I just want to clarify that they did within a request. Once we did, I don't want it to sound like they haven't put an effort forward, because we did go from 450 to 650 a few years ago. So I just, we did present and we presented and we got it. So I want to make that clear.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going on to, is there any other discussion on that? Hi, Joanna.
Hi, are you, sorry, I'm late. I had another thing this morning. What, were you talking about the extra money?
No, actually, we are
Okay.
not there yet.
Yeah, I
Okay, we're
jumped
just
ahead,
getting
sorry.
there.
Okay,
We
great.
were just doing a summary on the report.
Okay,
Just-
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and as of Joanna just seems to come in right at the right time. We are gonna discuss the FinCom and what we have to go forward with the select board. Actually, can we skip that for 1 minute? Because that's gonna be an in-depth conversation. Go to the F-24 contracts for a minute, because that will be very quick, my request to go on to those. Is
Okay.
everybody okay with that? It's this will just take a couple of minutes.
Okay,
The fiscal year 2024 contracts, when going through everybody's sites, I have some requests that maybe we can add onto these, Jericho, with everybody's approval.
Mhm.
I would like to see that the Art Association Healing Through the Arts actually has a headliner that says Healing Through the Arts. Because when you go to their scholarship, you have to go to this specific, find the scholarship, and anybody can apply for a scholarship. And, you know, I've said to people, there's something called Healing Through the Arts through the town, you should go apply for it. You can't find Healing Through the Arts. What you find is that they offer scholarships, and then you apply and they decide where it goes. So I would like to see it that headlined a Healing Through the Arts scholarship, because if you're gonna tell us it's called Healing Through the Arts, it should be on their website as Healing Through the Arts.
Okay.
That would be a request to be put on to that. And then I would love to see, I would love to see everybody that has a website, that it is updated. Because I went to everybody's websites and there's stuff that hasn't been put on there in 2 years. There's information that isn't valid any longer, addresses and phone numbers that don't work. And so I would like to see that everybody present us with an updated website. I think that could be, because if we're gonna fund for, you know, it should be readily available with the accurate information for people that are going in to use the tools. How do you feel about those? Very simple ads, but I feel like we're not getting enough.
The other thing I can do is, as an intermediary step, I can have Florencia or someone throw together a web page with the specific links to all of the services that got funded through CRC this year, so that maybe we can get a spot that puts all this information together with links out, just so that we can kind of be an intermediary step. Wow, because
And
website,
it's just, I mean, like, they have no accurate or ongoing information right now, and I would like to see them, you know, bring it up to date, bring
Yeah.
stuff up to, I mean, I went to look for something and I was like, oh, there's a Narcan trip. And I was like, oh, wait, that was 2 years ago.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I want to see the dates, like things just updated everywhere along the line. If we're gonna fund them, why can't they update it so that when the public goes on, they can find the information they want? Even our website has, you go to yours, there's a line underneath it that gives you an attachment. You hit that attachment.
I have a question. Is it possible that should we, by practice, at the end of each cycle, sorry, that's my dog, kind of. Not me. Is it possible for us to like issue a press release that says that here's the grants that we awarded this year, and here are the agencies, and here are the programs? Because
Absolutely.
I agree, Dorothy, like people don't know that this is happening. And at least we could maybe get the Inky to pick it up. I know if we wrote it in a press release, they would pick it up.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem.
I mean, and we can also be having the town, like I try and have town social media, et cetera, do some outreach and so on for this. And I think we're gonna be getting a comms department relatively soon. So there's more space for us to be publicizing through town channels some of this stuff. It just would require, you know, just requires ongoing effort and then some content generation as well. But I think the press release thing, like I can throw an outline of those together for us to share and reback like as soon as we're ready to go. You know?
Okay, but if we could if that could go on, does anybody have any other concerns they had with any other contract that they wanted
So fair.
to see?
No.
Okay,
I
and the
think-
other thing is, just guys, everybody should know this, is that, Joanna, you missed this the last time, Interfaith Council's, budgets numbers were off. They were not correct. So. Got to do something about that,
Right.
because it's like been year after year that the numbers don't add up or they're not right. So,
I think one other thing with the contracts and. I'm only in this, not even a full year now,
Mhm.
but the quarterly reports.
Mhm.
I know that Anne tracks them down and, there's doesn't seem to be with some. The urgency or the complete information, it needs to be done and. Enforcing that in some way or another.
So maybe each contract could have a set deadline and we could put a line in there that says that the deadline, if it's not met, payment is withheld to the next quarter. And it's reviewed in the next quarter. I mean, if there's a deadline and it's gonna go in, it's gonna be discussed, it's gonna be approved and moved on, and then there's, and then if it isn't received within that period of time, it's withheld to the next quarter.
It's accountability
Right.
that needs to be enforced.
And it has to be thorough and
Right.
everything answered, because there's a few that. They're such random information.
Right.
Okay, so is that, how does everybody feel about that?
Good.
Okay. So
Sounds good
Jericho,
to me.
okay, I'll make so we'll put a motion about all these things at one point. Jericho, we just discussed the fact that, for quarterly reports now, we're gonna set out in the contracts, the quarterly report dates and state in the contract that if the information is not in, then their payments will be withheld to the next quarter.
Okay.
Okay,
We have as yet had zero response from Gosnell telling them that we're not gonna pay them. So,
really?
yeah, not a single peep back from them unless you got something in. Yeah, no, not a single word.
That's a week.
That's over a week, I think. Yeah, I think we sent it out. Yeah, no, exactly a week.
It's a week, yeah, okay.
And it was for both quarter 2 and quarter 3 that we informed that we were not releasing payment. We said quarter 2, but also I think I
One and
added
two.
a 1 and
They
2.
didn't get paid the first time.
And I do understand that there are a few people in the program. I talked to a mother of the child in the program that said it was actually the first thing that was working with their child, so that's amazing and
It's a good, like,
good to hear. We want to hear that. So. We just do we have to put a motion together? And I have a question on that. I thought the chair wasn't allowed to make a motion.
I think the chair can entertain motions, but
Right.
cannot make them themselves. Yeah.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion for me that we put into these contracts a quarterly date with payment not being withheld if you don't meet the quarterly date for your reports, and that we ask people to update their website, and that the Artists Association, we would like them to put something that states that there's a scholarship that says Healing Through the Arts.
I make
Comment,
that
Madam
motion.
Chair, the chairman can make a motion. We found that out a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
And just as an aside, you and I, when we had that conversation with the Artists Association, we said, well, how do they find you? Because when we first gave them the thing, and then the second year we had this question, I said, how do they know the program exists? How do they find it on the website? Because it wasn't called out specifically on their website, and it's still the same problem. So I'll make the motion that you just stated.
Okay.
I'll
thank you.
second it.
Okay, Linda,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Veronica.
I,
Okay.
May I suggest something else to go along with that? So what to me, what it seems like we've just done is that the default is now that you do not get your quarterly payment until we receive the reports and.
No, the default is it has to be there on the date.
Yeah, so
And in place.
So up until now, it has been like, we collect the information and then, or we collect the reports and then we send out the money. If we could have a exceedingly brief meeting just to go run down the list and check, like go, no, or yes, no on the reports when they come in. and then release the money and have that built into the process? That would be helpful for me for out of.
I think that's what we're
season?
trying, we've been
Okay.
trying, so we're not gonna make that a thing, but we have been trying with that one.
Okay.
so,
Okay.
I understand, and yes, we will do that, we will continue to do that. So let's go back, now we're gonna skip back to the FinCom meeting. And the presentation, and, Joanna, I'll let you start. I've already, I'm gonna voice an opinion that I sort of voiced before when, after you.
You know what? I thought it was very frustrating because I felt like they didn't understand that we already have a process in place for accepting grants. And like, I was completely baffled by how that could be this gap in knowledge, since this has been operating and going on for so long. And I'm confident that there was more to what was going on than we were aware. And I haven't really dug into that yet. I did, do you guys know when this is going before the select board? The letter?
Yes, tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Okay. So I was thinking that we could amend the letter
Do what?
to say that, to say that we have a process and we know that there are people interested in these grants. Because I
So-
feel like we spent a lot of time debating what the process was going to be. And the process is exactly the same as the process we have. Unless anybody else feels differently, I didn't think it needed to be reinvented.
No, so this is what, I'm gonna speak on this, Joanna, because I did get into a very lengthy conversation, actually debate and whatever else afterwards. Is that I was told, what are you trying to, what you have is the process that you do already. It's the same process we're asking you to do. And my debate back was, well, we know when we put this process out that there's money allocated towards this. And the response was, well, you don't know that until you get to town floor meeting. And I said, yeah, but you've earmarked money this way. And they're like, you don't know that you're gonna have that money. So the process is no different.
Well,
And I
that's
was
not
like,
true,
"Yes."
but that is not true.
Well, I'm telling you that I had a great debate and said, I disagree with you. That we know when we go out there that we can say to people, the town has supported this amount of money behind this grant. Or behind this grant process. Right now, what you're saying is, we go out to people and say, we want this, we have an RFP, might come, might not come. Can you put something together for us? To put to the grant. And adamantly, it came back that it's the same exact process, we're just thinking of it differently. And I said, I'm not thinking of it any differently. When I go out there, I know I can say to the people, we're behind you, the town's behind you. And so now let's hope the voters are behind you. But with this, we don't even have the town saying, yes, we would like to, we think that this funding can be there. So,
Yeah, I mean, the $650,000 is in the budget warrant.
right.
There's money, it's a line item in the budget warrant. So, technically, yes, it doesn't exist until the budget warrant is passed, but it exists in the budget.
Oh, I know, I had this conversation, it was a very, yeah.
Just question to clarify the process for me.
Mhm.
If it's in the budget is presented, and it eventually that whole budget goes to the general voting population. If the budget is voted down, does it then go back to the finance committee, to the select board to make cuts? And then that's what happens?
If the town does not accept the budget, so
Has-
is when we go to town meeting, we accept different warrant articles.
Right,
People vote on the warrant articles. So
right,
if people went and said, I disagree with warrant article 9, our article.
right.
Then we don't get the funding.
Nothing in that article gets funded.
Nothing in that article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it becomes,
But that's never happened.
Has that ever happened? That's never happened.
No.
Well, yes, we've had it happen where it's actually the money has changed.
Yes, that part has happened, but we've, you know, the town has never voted to not accept a budget. There's been a couple of attempts to question capital items or to hold off on capital items, but it didn't go through. And we've removed, you know, debt exclusions and big issues, you know, like when they went for the Manicat sewer, right? It didn't get
Right.
passed. So it didn't get voted on. But I think that in this particular case, I mean, there's more than one way to accomplish this, right? And so I mean, certainly it's not popular for any committee to step outside of the rules, right, at the town meeting, and say, you know, make a motion from the floor that would like to increase our budget for this
No.
reason. It's just not, it
No.
can be done, but it's frowned upon, right?
Well, there's,
The only time that's actually happened, guys, and they got away with it, was when Catherine Stover got up and asked for money, and she obviously was the town clerk, but otherwise we never do that. Somebody from the outside does it. But Catherine Stover got up and asked for money for, I think it was the funeral home or the something along those lines.
I
And
remember
she
that.
got it. And she got it.
Yeah,
but that was the only time-
Preserving the records?
These years, that's the only time in my 40 years of going to town meeting, 50 years of going to town meeting, that's ever happened. So it's not something we do.
yeah, I agree.
that a town employee does that, or a town.
Yeah, that a
affiliate.
town, any town entity does it, period.
Yeah,
Right.
no.
It has to come
So-
from a private citizen.
So from what my conversation was afterwards, was that, we should just put together an RFP. We, should design what we want in that RFP, put it out. They're telling me that if the override happens and we go to the November town meeting, that we could start, if we pick somebody to do this, they could start the very next day. And so, I mean, I'm still, and I was, what kept coming up was, and I guess, shame on us for all of us, but I didn't know it was, Denise kept saying that we stepped out of the boundaries. We did something wrong in our presentation and the way in rules. And I guess in reality is, Jericho, you should have gone to Libby and Brian and said that we were seeking the money before we wrote a letter. So that it wasn't, and at one point, you know, I was told in a conversation, you know, you didn't reach out to, and I said, wait a minute, because before this letter went to the Board of Selectmen, it went to Libby and it went to Brian. And they had 2 days before I sent it out to the Board of Selectmen, which is what I normally never, and everybody should know this with protocol. And I sent it to Denise before it went, after it went to Denise and the board, is as in acting in my role, nothing that's ever public has ever not gone to Libby and had Libby had it before it went anywhere else. Just so everybody knows that, and I corrected that. I was like, I am sorry, but you know, I did make sure it went there before it went anywhere else before.
Yep.
But when in the process, I was told that, Jericho, the proper way would have been that you called a meeting with Libby and Brian to discuss the fact that we were gonna put a letter forward, and have a discussion as to whether it could or couldn't be, and they worked with you to find a way for our letter to go in.
I mean,
I'm just being,
agreed, that's.
I'm just being told that was the
But
problem.
I thought that's basically what we did, like you ran into Libby, you had that conversation.
Yeah, but it's not my job. My job is, Libby got the letter. I told Libby that we were sending there. We talked to Libby. She had already had some inkling that something was coming down the pipe. But from what I understand, the process should have been that as department head, you went and sat down with them and said, this is what we're looking for. So we all learned a lesson in that part of the process. I felt, Joanna, I sort of felt that there was a predetermined answer before we presented.
Yeah,
And
I did too, and I wasn't aware of it. I had had other conversations where I had thought that there was a different outcome.
yeah, no, there was a most definite predetermined answer there. I also, Joanna, I was a bit, and will be reaching out to Denise, I've taken a couple of days, offended by the fact that she made that statement in regards to, first of all, I don't like the fact that she said we didn't do dual process, because I felt that in responding to Libby, giving it to Libby first and Brian, and then sending it out, I did do the due process properly. From my standpoint, but also, her statement about the fact that this was like going towards one demographic and we hadn't, that one demographic wasn't more important than the rest. That statement really bothered me.
Okay.
And I'm actually gonna respond to her because I feel like this is the one age group, all of our age groups, we fit into them, we fit in with the younger kids, we do a lot for the elderly. Anything that comes in with the elderly, we have fully funded, right?
Yeah.
It's never been a question. We do the small friends, we do the food pantry, we have everything else, circumferences, pretty much everybody. We don't do anything within that age group of children. And the idea, and this was the biggest thing, guys, they kept putting it back to the public school.
Yeah.
And I kept responding to them, and I kept responding to them to the fact that it was a community-based effort, not just the school. And then Brian made a statement about that if it went to the private schools, he expected them to pay for it. And I went back on the statement to him that
That was also odd.
they were taxpayers in the
Right.
community. I had a conversation later on about it. Some of it I will not explain, but some of it I will, and I feel free to say that I did clarify the fact that if I'm paying taxes here and my child is, and we're talking about school, and I'm putting a child in a private school, then not only am I paying taxes, I'm also paying, so it's not my tax dollars that are paying the budget or the income tax from the state that's paying for the salaries. I'm paying the salaries of the teacher at the school, as well as paying a salary of a teacher that's working in a private school, who's then bringing their income back into the town. So that idea that we would look at it, I could see if you're living on the Cape and you're saying, well, you're putting your kid in the school and you live in Sandwich, you're putting your child in the school in Eastham, then your tax dollars, you're putting private funds that are benefiting that town because those people live in that town and their revenues are going to go back into everything circulates back into this town. Mhm.
It could be semantics, but what we're talking about is not funding for something for the school. We're not saying the school needs a new gymnasium. We're talking about funding
People,
programs for children, for
Right.
people, wherever they are.
But they kept bringing it back to the public school. It was like, and
Why didn't
we
the
were
school
told that
request
we
this money?
needed,
Why aren't you here with the school?
why isn't the
Right.
school here with you? And I'm like, it's
Right.
not just the school.
Right.
It's not the school.
It's
We're
kids.
looking at kids, there's
whole
not
thing.
enough.
So I guess two things. One is I did bring this up with Mandy Vassal, and her email back to me was, what is the CRC?
Oh my
Okay.
God. But Joanna, we reached out about a couple of programs that we found out about through my research that have been available to the town for free. Some great programs, really highly acclaimed, being used in a lot of the school districts.
Project here,
Year here.
yeah.
I had Jericho write to the school, and Jericho wrote to the school. His initial response from administration at the school was, we're implementing it a little bit, but let me get in touch with Sherry. The
Yeah.
next day he came back where Sherry said, no, we're not using that program. And we're doing, it's called Teen Touch or something like that. which
Teen
is-
Truth, I
Teen
think.
Truth, which has actually got nothing to do with it. It's a cultural youth organization after school. I also found out that for the last few years, and they are working right now, they're trying to work with Sherry, is that ASAP's had this $50,000 grant for alcohol prevention programs, which has been shot down every time they've gone to the school district. And they are trying to actively work with them now. And my question to ASAP was, well, what if we just what if you just start hitting everything else? Because it's not only about the school district, it was about whether it was church groups or school or youth, Boys and Girls Club or youth athletic programs, like you
Right.
have the hockey program, you have, you know, the soccer program, you have the lacrosse program. These things are sailing. You have all these things outside of that where it can be. And this thing that I found is, it's like a video thing that Marjorie Healy was really behind as Attorney General. And it's literally little videos that are played throughout, can be played in a homeroom for a few minutes. It's
Yes.
openly accessed. Kids could have done it at home during COVID. You know, there's just, and the Department of Education and Mass Department of Education have between them about 75 free programs that we don't use. And so clearly, and the thing was, Denise did say that she asked the superintendent of schools about this, and the superintendent of schools couldn't identify a program or where she was getting the funding for it.
Yep, correct.
You know, and then I did say to them, and this was my big thing, and I'm sorry, but in my one of my conversations, I said, I don't want to see on the front of the newspaper any longer that you have $100,000 problem with your toilets. Don't put it in front on the screen. Don't put it in the newspaper. Don't put it in the Board of Selectmen meeting. Don't make it a concern of everybody in the community. If every time you reach out with a problem and we show up and say, is there any way we can help? You punch us in the face and tell us to get lost.
Right.
I mean, that was pretty bold, but I'm being honest. Like, don't put it out there to the public as a public problem, because in reality, you're never willing to get the help when people come and say, if there are ways, as a community, we can help. And I also said, don't take that $100,000 out of something else in this community that could use that money if you don't want us to put it towards this way.
Right, and don't tell the kids that they're not going to have art supplies or other supplies because of this. Like, that's ridiculous. And I mean, I guess I was left with a couple of feelings. One, you know, after all of the publicity that this issue received, is it not as serious as it was blown up to be, right? And this is all some sort of, like, I don't understand that, right? And then I think the other thing is that so the person that I had spoken to is a teacher at the high school who has a program that is pretty effective in dealing with kids, and he wants to train other teachers how to do intervention. So one of the thoughts that I had, and I asked him over the weekend to write like a synopsis of his program, and he did. So I think that if we wanted to amend the letter to the select board and say, we in fact have proposals that we could fund right now. But I feel like it's not fair to the community for them to release all the information about this issue. And then when we come and try to present a solution, say, oh no, you know, we're not really sure we should be doing that right now, or we don't want your help.
Well, Joanna, I thought about this a lot, and I think one way of also doing this too is it might behoove us to call in the people that we think that can be running a program.
Yep.
That we think have the tools, and have them sit in front of us.
Yep.
And come up, what I would like to see is it not go to one entity, but be a collaborative effort between a few of them, that with somebody being the stakeholder.
I think
So
that's
that
great.
do you know what I mean? Because if you could get the tools that, like, Health Imperatives has a great amount of tools. Fair Winds right now has a great amount of tools, you know, NAMI has a great amount of tools. If we can get the three of them coming in and each one saying, here, we're gonna do this, and I'm gonna cover this, and I'm gonna cover this, and I'm gonna cover this portion of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep,
And then maybe if we present it as, you wanted this, well, here, we've got a collaborative effort going on between all of these agencies who are gonna cover this, this, and this. I think if you pull it together as a collaborative work, not one contract, but a
Yep.
contract going out to one body holding it with all the entities underneath it, then what we're presenting is, you have a problem, you've made it public to us, and we're saying to you that how can we present this and make it beneficial? If this group of people who are our biggest strongholders in this course of action can come forward and present something to, give us a program that is covering every age group.
I think that's a really a
Hold
great
on,
idea.
Veronica
Okay,
was
go ahead.
talking.
All right, I think it happened organically with our cannabis grants.
Mhm.
That, and of course, that's primarily an adult population that is being served with those, but we have an organization that is doing medical. We have an organization that is doing peer counseling. We have the other counseling portion. Then we have education, and it happened organically on that level. But what you're suggesting is that same thing happens for the age group we're talking about, with organizations coming together and each taking where they have their strength and working together.
Working together
It's
and
just-
making one entity out
Right.
of one. Like they come
Right.
together as one collaborative effort to say, we as organizations are gonna provide this preventive educational program. Because preventive education, by all of them, can go into every spectrum. It can go into the youth programs, it can go in, it can go into daycare, it can go everywhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely everywhere.
And the other thing that we're missing is a huge chunk of prevention is just, and this is the stuff that was identified in the island-wide behavioral health survey, the GPS study that was done a couple of years ago, is that there is just nothing to do that's pro-social and separate from substance use. Like
Right.
there's,
Right.
just literally providing opportunities for people to do stuff that aren't centered around, like,
Right,
where does a teen go on Nantucket? They don't have the money to go out anywhere. There's
Right.
no location on the island for them to do anything.
Well, no,
Like,
I'm gonna clarify that, because I just wanna, I wanna make sure we're supportive of the programs that are actually doing it. So the Boys and Girls Club started a teen center, a teen thing, they have some kids, in there. Our house is trying to hit another demographic, and then I think some of the programs, the sporting programs are really trying to hit it. So what we have to do is not say there's nothing, right? Just say it's limited, and how much more access can we give them? Because what's happened is access to public facilities has been shut down as far as where we could get kids into programs on weekends that can do stuff.
right. And another issue is what you have been talking about, that our demographics have changed. And I'm just focused on the Latinx population right now. Culturally, there has to be different ways of embracing and reaching, because it's not just, I'm gonna say it's not just the Latinx population. Here on Nantucket, you've got parents that are working 2 and 3 jobs. So you've got a child who may have to go home to do daycare for their younger siblings. So there's
That's in
this,
every demographic.
that's an image, that's how I wanted to, I stopped and I said, really every demographic. It's very typical, maybe off island in a Latinx population where, you can do all these programs, but if the kids can't go during regular times, they can't stay after school because they have to go home. So we have to think about other ways of finding
I agree.
programs that everyone can feel like they belong somewhere, that,
Yeah, and this is where I want to just say, I do think that the Boys and Girls Club has made some really serious effort, especially even with the adult sector.
Yeah.
So I think that, they might even be a viable tool in that group of people, because it's, what was interesting was that they kept coming back to the fact that the public school carries most of the weight of the kids. In which, they have 1,700 students, right?
Right.
Which is a big, but in all honesty, it's not that the 263 that are in other things don't matter.
And even those 1,700 don't spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in school. Like you can't partition a problem that stems from
Right.
so many different causes and say we're only giving money to this organization that has the kids for 6 hours a day plus additional programming. But like, there's no third space in the sense of there being, a non-structured place where children of a given age range can hang out, and that is a significant problem. That is, of us grew up, there were places for us to go that were not directly supervised, that we could be ourselves and figure out who we were and interact with each other. And those spaces, for a variety of different reasons, are gone, you know, like you are never gonna fit every teen into a program. You need
Right.
to have programs that allow teens
Multiple.
to make their spaces. That's,
Right.
that's the thing. And that, we also need to look at.
Well,
the
and
fact-
the,
Oh, sorry, just the public.
It's
This is in the summer.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yep.
big at-risk time.
well, and the
There are-
other thing,
Oh, no, agreed.
Go ahead, Joanna.
you know, I think we were also trying to make a couple of other points, especially with regard to health imperatives, right? And I really see them as being important to this effort because they have a way of communicating with those populations. And some of the skills that need to be developed are for parents. You know, some of these other populations need to learn how to speak to their children about alcohol and substance abuse. And there aren't currently any programs that are doing that. And I think Health Imperatives would be a really great partner because they have engaged a large contingent and they could be instrumental in maybe hosting classes about how to talk to your kids about drugs and alcohol, or even handing out a pamphlet to every person who comes in for an appointment. I mean, there's just different ways to do this, but let's circle back because Dorothy, I really think you're right. We should call these folks in and have a meeting. And I also think that based on Mandy's email, that we should call her to have a meeting with us as well, so that we can explain the programs that we offer in the community and what we're doing and what we're trying to do, which is to help her. Right? And to help all of the kids, because ultimately, whatever this ends up looking like, we're going to want the public schools to promote so that kids understand they have access to these programs.
I agree 100%. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we have to look at what we want this RFP to look like as we're gonna go into this process with them.
Yep.
And what our expectations are gonna be of the program that's out there. I had a long talk with Julie Kehoe this weekend, actually.
Okay.
And about this and about, because part of their cannabis grant that they were awarded is gonna be harm reduction education. That is part of it. And they are, you know, they definitely, as definition was, they are definitely the most culturally competent people in our community, which is they've done it. They know how to do it. They've perfected it.
Mhm.
And they're always trying to improve it, which is.
I really like that word, Dorothy.
Thanks.
That is an excellent word, culturally competent. Okay, I gotta work that into my vocabulary.
And so I think that she, you know, we had a long conversation and we tended, when we talked about, when I said, I think it would be collaborative effort, she goes, I think that would be the best way for us to handle this. Like, she feels that they have tools they can bring in, but that there are other tools that others have. What was also interesting is before I did this, I had a conversation with Jason, about the Behavioral Health Initiative and what they've done, because I'm impressed with what they've done. And a lot of that had to do with sort of, you know, we did push a lot for collaboration as being a key here. And they've, you know, it's happening. And he's really proud of it. And it's really, but he didn't know the services that Health Imperative had in the building he was in.
Right.
In the same building. And I just said to him, you need to reach out to Julie Kehoe, because he didn't know that they did medically assisted programs. He didn't know a lot of what was going on within that building. And I was like, you guys share a building. You need to reach out to her, because they're hitting a population that nobody else can hit right now. And they're giving, and they built the trust of that community, which is the key word is trust, right? And in order for anything to go across and for us to hit every demographic, they have to trust us that what we're trying to do is to help them and help parents and help the students find ways so that this is not an issue in their lives.
Okay. So what is the plan for the select board hearing on Wednesday night?
Well, we put in that we are all can be in attendance. We put it in as a meeting. So it's there in a meeting.
Okay.
We will do the presentation. Denise did send a letter to the Board of Selectmen stating what was stated in the meeting to us about the additional grant. I think we still present it. And I think we present it now knowing what they're looking for,
Okay.
because we didn't know what they were looking for, right?
Yep.
And I'm actually, I don't want to pull the letter of request, because in actuality, as we go forward with the RFP, they know we're requesting it. And I sort of felt, hopefully this time I won't feel as though conversation was had before we got there and a decision made. And I'm
Okay.
hoping that we can at least get them in a conversation about it with us. At least make them think about it, right?
Yep.
And that's why I wanted to discuss this RFP and what we wanted to see in this RFP, because I actually want to get it going with Jericho so we can actually get it out and moving and let them see that we're serious about this. Call
Okay.
in the players and get the RFP.
Okay.
So, how does
I-
everybody feel about that? And I think everybody that can talk, anybody that can be there, because we are in as a meeting, should be there.
Okay.
And because they'll ask us to make the presentation of this first, and then we'll go in to make the presentation on the other. And I mean, Joanna and Jericho spoke very eloquently about it, guys, on our behalf the other day. I wasn't as good at it as they were, to be honest.
I don't know if I think that, Dorothy.
Okay, but that's how I felt. So I think that if we could just right now sort of discuss what we'd like to see in this RFP. I think it would give us a basis of what we're looking for down the road. And I think one of the things, the key thing is I would like to see it be a collaborative adventure, like a collaborative grant.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have to go to Coastal Resiliency Committee right now,
Okay,
but I'm happy to send you an email with my thoughts.
that'd be awesome, Joanna.
Okay. And also happy if you need to powwow before the select board meeting on Wednesday night, also available if anybody wants to chat about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
I will be there. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I mean, with respect to the RFP, the things that I think we really need to develop, we can pull most of the cannabis and the CRC wording, we can probably pull. But what we really need to figure out is how do we want to parameterize, where do we want to draw the borders around this programming? Which demographics, this is youth facing, island residents, how do we want to define that? And how do we want to define necessary services or ideal services for them? Like, how do we differentiate this from the other two grants? Other two RFPs are the things that I think we need to specifically, how do we want to separate this from the substance abuse and the regular CRC funding?
Okay, so that was one of the things that came up in conversation, was that why didn't we think about this when the first RFP went out and in the first grant process? And I actually said, well, if you hadn't put it on the newspaper when we had already made our decisions, then we wouldn't have had that. We would have known, this was not a variable until we had already made our allocations, right? So I think that we've definitely said it's for the Nantucket community and it's for the youth of the community. And youth is not determined under the age of, youth is from birth on, because as much as we can get from the very beginning is going to be crucial, right?
Right. But is it 21 and under population? Consider that youth?
I think it's 18 and under, but I'm not sure.
Well, actually, youth is, but
Yeah.
what's interesting is the human brain and everything functions, stops at the growth is 25.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that what we're trying to say is we've got an issue and we have somebody that's doing education from 18 to 29, right? They're going to do community-based education. What we're looking for is preventive and
Right.
Early
program,
intervention.
intervention
education,
program.
Right.
Its circumferences a lot.
Right.
So,
intervention.
I think John has his hand up.
John,
I just wanted to note that with respect to the observational, why didn't you talk about this in your cannabis grant? We clearly in this proposal, it seems to me, absolutely have to include alcohol. That wasn't available in the cannabis grant. And alcohol is probably as dangerous to this age group. And they start with it as early as they do their vaping. And I historically on Nantucket. So there is this is a broader educational focus than just cannabis. That's my observation at the moment.
That's accurate
So-
because I know my kids were in school. There were some kids that got into the parents' liquor cabinet and they were in 5th grade. So this is pervasive and it's accepted in the general norm of society as opposed to drugs. But so there's in people's minds, there's a distinction between alcohol and drugs. And alcohol really is the beginning of much earlier. They have easy access to it. And they see their
Okay.
parents have a cocktail at 6 o'clock at night. You know, we all grew up with that age group. My parents, cocktail hour, home from work, 6 o'clock. The kids see something that's socially accepted and they're going to start to do that. And then they don't have control over what they're doing.
With some of it, I want to clarify something. I think that just to, the cannabis grant is prevention and there are people within alcohol treatment inside that cannabis grant. The
Mhm.
cannabis grant is all substance abuse, education, it's substance abuse treatment.
Mhm.
Substance abuse does entail alcohol.
Mhm.
Which generally targets, though, those cannabis grants, let's be real, those cannabis grants generally target the adult as opposed to the kids.
No, I totally agree. I
Right.
just wanted to set the wording straight that some of the prevention programs are dealing with, or in treatment programs with alcohol. I just want to make that clear. But yes, John, I agree with you that alcohol is the easier, the hardest, and the one that people become most addicted to quicker, right? You
Earlier.
can come off of heroin and it's very simple. Coming off of alcohol can kill you. And so I think that what we have is we want to come up with a prevention, an education, and an intervention within this age group. It's all three,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this RFP has to cover that whole body of what we're looking for. And
And the focus really has to be just on the age group. It's not school.
Yeah.
right,
It's age group.
Yeah.
age within the community.
Right.
Yeah, community age group.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want it to be multi-pronged. That's what
Right.
we're looking for, right? We're looking for
Right.
something that's just gonna reach every single way we possibly can. And
Mhm.
the only way, you can't give one organization 50, 100, whatever, and expect them to be able to pull it off, but you can make it. You can give that to a group and they can do it
Mhm.
because they have other ways of feeding off of maybe other programs they have inside of them that they can pull, that they can pull up.
Mhm. Now, in our applications and RFPs for general human services, we do talk about collaboration in there.
Correct.
But how do we basically structure this that we want it to be collaborative, that you're not gonna we don't want just this part. Yeah,
I was actually thinking about that. So
There's state and federal grants that are collaborative, that have to be collaborative efforts to get in.
I don't know how we would specifically configure this grant. When I say I don't know, is I don't know yet how we would
Right.
specifically build collaboration into this. I would assume it would require, one of the ways I was thinking about it is a network of MOUs or an oversight group or a meeting group that requires members from all of the different individuals who are receiving money under this grant to have essentially a small organization to run the collaborative portion of it. And then they could interact with us, but that was pie in the sky. That was just off the top of my head. There's no we haven't done anything like this in other, like, we don't build collaboration directly into the CRC or the cannabis grant money. I've been thinking about ways for off and on for a year or so now to figure out how do we actually require it as part of the
It is
process.
supposed to be a required process.
But like, how do we construct an arrangement so that we can enforce that? Like,
Well, this I think might be the first way we can do it. And I think that if we can, there's tons of federal and state grants that work on collaboration. In order for the grant to come through, the organizations have to work together and they have to show what they've done.
Right.
I also think that all the stakeholders in this want to see a difference and want to make an impact. And it's not about that they're fighting about who's going to make the impact. It's
Mhm.
like, how can we best together
Collectively, yeah.
make that impact? And I think that maybe the key is to call them in before you write the RFP.
so we
Do you
had,
know what I mean? Like, call them into a meeting to come up with and
Get their ideas.
well, how we're gonna write this RFP and this is what we're gonna do.
Mhm.
we had a youth group for the behavioral health initiative. We have a list of people who are participating in that youth group that we could call in. I think I still have the email list. We could start there for, hey, if we got X amount of funding, what kind of things would you do with it? And then we could build together
What kind of youth group is?
so this was for the behavioral health initiative. So we
Right.
were trying to find ways to address gaps in education intervention. This is what we were doing last summer with the behavioral health group. We were trying to build into a behavioral health first aid core for youth, like where we would train up kids to be basically behavioral health first responders is the wrong term, but the QPR question, what is it, the QPR first aid, behavioral health crisis first aid training. We were trying to offer that out both to directly to students. We were trying to figure out other ways to kind of get at this particular demographic, regardless of where they were. We had everyone from the Boys and Girls Club all the way through our house. We had the community school. We've got a group of people who have demonstrated a willingness to commit some time and effort to this. And then we were going to start doing I was just calling them a summit for youth service providers to have a touch base a couple times a year that we would fund with food, et cetera, to be kind of community building within the behavioral health youth, like the providers of behavioral health services for youth, to get them the social interaction outside of any like actual agenda. So we've got people we can contact with, and we've got people who have been trying to come up with ideas in this space.
Right, so the question is, they're coming up with, what you're saying is that you have for me to get this straight, you're saying that you have participants like the Teen Center, Our House, different group organizations. That are part of what you call the youth group.
Yeah, this was a
Right.
youth work group for the Nantucket Behavioral Health Initiative.
But
So, but we started with the idea of building a youth to youth behavioral first aid
Mhm.
core, more or less. The implementation of that was significantly out of scope for the youth group. As it turns out, it was a little bit too much for what we were working on there. But with the addition of some grant money administered through the process we're developing here, we could use that. And we have essentially a short list of stakeholders in this area who have demonstrated an interest in working on this.
right, so the question would be, if we could get some of the three major stakeholders in this, which are actually NAMI ASAP, Fair Winds, and Health Imperatives, to work together, they could then maybe do these programs through the youth group.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? And be part of the tools that the youth group uses this first to get them, up and running.
yeah, I mean, I think the way I was thinking of it was that we would just be soliciting. So these are people, so like these are, it was like a Fernando from the Boys and Girls
I get it,
a bunch of different people, and we just be like, hey, if there was programming money of around this amount, what kind of stuff would you be submitting? We're trying to get together a like free RFP, I guess, so that like, not so much, once we start implementing this, we could build it into a separate youth group that is a board that monitors youth facing human service providers. but there were like 4 or 5 different things that were like, we had this youth group, then that kind of splintered into 4 or 5 different sub initiatives. But we still have the mailing list and the people who are willing to reply to us.
Right, so I understand that. I think my feeling is that, this is personally my own personal feeling is, I would like to, the reason I'd like to see this collaboration is that we're going to the town for this once. Right? And so what I want to see is that if we can get these 3 organizations working together, the benefits that they can bring to all these other organizations is going to be astronomical, right? And if we can get them working together, then if they can pull this collaboration off, the grant money available to them at the state and federal level to continue it is massive. And the implications that they can make into these other programs can be, the tools they can bring into each program can be unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like a harm risk reduction program by Health Imperatives into our house where they have a lot of Spanish speaking kids in that. You're beginning to bring in, different avenues of their strengths in their programs. NAMI is very good at some of their educational programs, especially for parents, right? They're very good at what the tools they have to understand and to go into, to be able to educate. NAMI is very good at education. They're very good at coming up with, they're always trying to find new ideas on how to get into the community. And Fairwinds is now building up, they have the clinicians, they have some of the programs, they have the DMH contract, so their resources are becoming bigger. So I think that I like the idea, Jericho, that some of these, that fabric, youth groups can come in, but I'd rather see youth groups go and say, we have this big plan and we want you to come work on this with us. And I want you to show us how to do this right now, because this is their resources. This will be the tool to build their programs within them. And I just think that we need something that's gonna sort of be multi-faceted, that we can get 3 entities together that become this like really strong foundation for us to work off of, to say, okay, what do you have in your toolbox? And what can you give to us to show us to go forward in this? And that doesn't mean that if this goes out and these 3 people have this entity, that within that grant process, our house can't come forward and say, hey, we have this program. Maybe we put into it that, or the school comes forward and maybe these 3 hold this grant and they do education and we put a certain amount towards, this is why I wanted to talk about this RFP, maybe a certain amount goes towards different people doing a little bit of programming. Hey, I would like to do this program. Do we leave a certain amount of money that allows a sub to come in and say, I would like to fund this program? Can I, and this entity that is holding on to this grant, that is doing prevention and education, we have a certain portion of it that goes to specific programming. Do you know what I mean, Jericho?
Yeah, no, I'm following.
So I just think that I think that when we go out and say, okay, hey, everybody, we have all this money, we're trying to get this money, and yes, you come in and you do this and you do this and you do this, everybody's going to sort of be going, okay, what can we do? But now we have 3 that have stuff in place that can then give us tools. And that this was the whole thing, like when I tried to say it's a foundation to move it into this. So if we can get these 3 entities, and they haven't said they want to do it, right? But these 3 entities in, 2 of them have said they would do it. I haven't talked to them.
Right.
I think that it's gonna be a no-brainer. But that they have the foundations, then everybody knows I can go to here for help and I can go to here for this. And maybe I can go to these guys because part of what their grant is with somebody else is they have to do work here and they can do it. So I think that I'm hoping for a foundation of education and training to go into the community to help with programming. Does that make sense, Jericho?
No, agreed. I mean, my primary reason of bringing up the youth group was just that it's an outreach channel to human service providers, and that we should absolutely be drawing upon, like, getting them involved in the process early. The thing that's confusing, not confusing. oh, sorry. The thing that I'm trying to work through now is how do we get the RFP configured so that we're not pre-choosing how, you know,
Right. Because there may be other, there
There
could be other
people who
organizations
collaborate.
that want to join. Is this, you know, I just wrote down youth behavioral health because in my mind, I've been thinking this is just substance abuse. But it really is youth behavioral
Behavioral
health,
health.
and that's what it should be packaged as, because self-medication, you know, you're anxious or whatever, you know, so you discover alcohol and then you discover drugs, as opposed to it's a behavioral health issue. And we really want a healthy community, so it's got to be under youth behavioral health.
I like the
umbrella.
name of that.
Yeah.
I like the name of that.
But I think
RFP.
that's what we
Yeah.
call
Behavioral health.
youth
Yeah.
behavioral health,
That's
like
a
the
great-
youth
great name,
behavioral
yeah.
health, request for youth behavioral health proposals. That,
Right.
I think,
I like that. I
Right.
like that name.
It's
Put that
a bigger umbrella because that's really what we're talking about.
And does everybody else agree with that name on that?
I agree with that.
Um,
good
I do
branding.
want to make a motion.
Yeah.
That'd be the name of it.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that our RFP is for youth behavioral health.
Works for me.
Somebody's got to make a second, not a work.
A
for me.
second.
I
I'll second.
Okay,
Okay, Veronica,
aye.
Linda,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
and Dorothy, aye. So we're gonna call it the Youth Behavioral Health
Initiative.
Initiative. Initiative or youth behavioral health grant?
I think initiative is good.
You
It opens- that
You
keeps it
taking the
open.
word from the behavioral health? I think, are we taking that from there?
Mm,
I don't want to take that from what they're doing.
right,
And Jericho just walked out.
right.
Um,
Let's run that by Jericho when he comes
Yes, 'cause
back.
I don't
but
want it to
yeah,
be
don't want to,
initiative.
right, right,
her first wordings was youth behavioral health. So
Right.
we're gonna leave it at that for now.
Okay.
And then I think what we have to do is. So we understand what we want the name of it to be, and we have to figure out how and what we want it to circumference. And we want it to be the age of birth to,
mhm.
21.
I'm thinking 21.
okay, let's go. birth to
Because
21.
it's beyond 18. You know, schools do have the responsibility of educating to 21,
23 here.
which is great with the extra, so. And maybe it's even 25. When we were talking earlier of the developing brain, your judgment, at least in males, doesn't come through until 25 or 26, so maybe it is.
Well, the
youth to
brain doesn't
25.
finish developing until
Till
25.
'Why did you-
Yeah.
Why did you look at me when you were like? brain?
Oh, you're the only. Take it as it is.
We have an example
We were
here.
we were
Oh.
using 25 as the
Yeah,
That's what we're saying,
cutout
okay,
for.
0 to 25.
yeah.
And. Okay, what else do we,
When we were talking earlier, when you walked out, youth behavioral health initiative or youth behavioral health grant? We
I
don't
would
want
say
to
youth behavioral health grant.
grant, okay,
Um,
I
the,
don't want to take the word
Right.
from them, and that's what I said,
Right.
so
And I-
that's what we're sticking with.
we may very well be rebranding NBHI, but I think it's important to like with the other contract review committee grants for human services, the substance misuse disorder, like
right.
having what it's for in the title is ideal, I think. I am going to have to go in about 5 minutes. I've got another meeting coming up.
Okay.
And can you close this out? If it continues going, I think you just have to go end. And you should be good. It should be fine. Alright.
Okay.
And do you have writer's cramp?
Yes, my hand is done.
Sorry, Ann. So we want this to work on the, we want it to be preventive,
Mhm.
So there's the majority of,
educative,
behavioral health funding on the island goes towards treatment, specifically
Right.
treatment. there are significant shortfalls in education, prevention, and recovery. And recovery and prevention are the ones with the lowest comparative investment rates, according to the GPS study. There were more gaps in the prevention and recovery than any other space. And I think our.
But that was done before the last couple of years of the
NBHI, yeah.
cannabis grants funding, so the funding on the
Prevention and intervention.
intervention has
Increased.
a
Well,
lot.
and I think that bang for your buck, prevention is where you want to be spent, prevention and education is where you want to be spending your money. So
So I
I
want to
would,
do prevention, education, and intervention,
Yeah.
because it's all three are necessary, necessary in it.
what was I gonna? Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a significant amount of information supporting limiting this or not including treatment directly into this grant.
It's not,
Yeah,
there's no,
that's- I think-
we don't have treatment in this. We don't want treatment in this.
Agreed.
This is a prevention, education, and intervention.
Mention,
So, prevention, or
and 0 to
education,
25.
prevention.
For
0 to 25.
behavioral health.
Did we go to 25?
Yeah.
Okay,
25.
I think as a mission statement, that's where we should start with them. I can anticipate there being some legal or regulatory implications between the 18 and 21. Like,
What?
I know that there are certain programs that are offered to
Yeah.
them. There are some complications. There shouldn't be, is what I'm trying to say, but alcohol consumption versus non-alcohol consumption, then programs available to school-age children don't always allow like over 21-year-old people who still count in the youth category to participate. I don't think that's a showstopper for any of the programming we're looking at here. It's just something that we should be considering. That certain things are limited to 18 and under, certain things are, then there's certain complications that come from mixing populations of school-age people and over school.
Right, but that would be putting them in the same program.
Yeah.
We're talking about different prevention education, because it's not gonna be the same for a nursery. school
No, agreed,
and a
agreed.
preschool.
Agree.
Right.
I'm just raising that as a potential complication, so
Okay.
not as a showstopper.
Okay. So preventive education and intervention for the community for behavioral health. The community members. And is it community
I would say, I've been using
or resident?
residents or community members. I like to be as inclusive as possible on that, so I tend to go with residents.
But what is like the
Yeah,
definition of
I
resident though?
haven't made any
Because
explicit
we have
definition.
Yes. Yeah, but community, someone who's visiting here.
Should be allowed to have access to these services. Someone who's
Exactly,
here working for the summer. So maybe community member. Members of the island community. Do we need to get supremely granular here? at
Well,
this
the
stage, or-
question, I mean, like it comes, a lot of the conversations come is, based on what, getting into the obstacle. Why should this be anything but the public schools? Because of tax dollars, and that's where my thing is, are you kidding me? They're paying taxes, and then, part of the school. We pay 19 million more to our public schools than what the state states that you have to pay. So the town pays, we pay 19 million more.
Right.
But all those funds don't necessarily come from sales tax. A lot of it comes from income tax. So that whole conversation based back and forth with me and somebody was, as we went back and forth, I was like, well, I'm sorry, but it's not just, this isn't about just the public school kids. It's about everybody in the community. And if you're going to tell me on tax-based dollars, then I can say to you that part of, the people that have their kids in the private schools are not only paying their income tax, but they're also paying taxes twice on sales tax and property tax and excise
Just a
tax,
minute.
you know, so
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
it becomes this whole thing, so we have, I really,
Oh,
hey, John, you're,
I'll mute him.
can you mute? Oh.
I got you, John.
Okay,
You're
is it, we have to be careful, because this is what we're going after is the community, not just the public schools.
Right,
We're
that's why
going
I think
after fixing
community members is more appropriate.
Yeah,
I don't have any problem with that. I think that it should be as inclusive as absolutely possible.
preventive education intervention for community members for behavioral health. And so we have to see what is it that we want them to. We have to decide what we want that RFP to represent. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there seem to be two approaches to it.
Programs,
We can lead them along to what we want. By structuring the RFP in such a way as it being sort of kind of clear what we're looking for on it. I think that we maybe want to reach out to the people in the area before we
we're gonna talk to them before we make this a solid RFP.
Okay.
We're just sort of discussing, and I think what I would like to see is a collaborative. Community-based program,
collaborative based programs for
for preventive
prevention,
education and intervention.
intervention for the community's youth,
No,
for the youth of the
a
community.
collaborative, community-based program in behavioral health. Circumferencing preventive education and interventioning programming. For the community members age 0 to 25.
I wouldn't use circumference, I would use inclusive, or
Thank you.
I wouldn't use that word circumference at all.
Okay, we
Collaborative.
just did that.
Youth-based behavioral health programming.
That encompasses the word you're looking for.
Thank you.
Yes,
Community members. And all you gotta do is get the mouse over here and click down there.
Where am I looking? Where am I put them?
See on the-
Oh, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
just on the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked to Adeline.
No, we need to,
Okay, all right.
this week,
Okay, well,
like soonish.
yeah, like, I'll be in touch later.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in this for, I think, hopefully only half an hour, 45 minutes.
Okay.
Shoot me a text when you get out of here. We'll figure it
Good.
Okay,
out. Sorry, guys.
sure. Okay, so we have the age group that and the idea of what we're looking for within that RFP.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself, right there,
Is,
it tells us what it is that we want.
right,
Right?
right.
I think we put this together. We try to get this into that. And then we call in the members. We call in the people that we would like to talk to them about this RFP that we're putting out before it goes out.
Mhm.
And get a lot of the stakeholders at the table with us
Mhm.
and all the stakeholders,
Mhm.
you know? Because I think you're gonna see that they're gonna have open arms to this. You know, and I think we invite, as stakeholders, we invite the new school, the Lighthouse School, the public schools, youth groups, the Boys and Girls Club. We just call them all in and say, this is what we're hoping in the RFP, this is what we're looking for. It
How
might
can
be-
you help?
How can you help? I think
Right.
that the key would be to, I would like to first call in for the first hour, have a conversation with the major stakeholders that we already have contracts with.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And ask them, and that being Health Imperatives, NAMI, ASAP, and Fairwinds.
Fairwinds, right.
And see where they stand on that. And you know what? It wouldn't hurt to call in Addiction Solutions, who wants to work on educational programming too.
Exactly. I
You
mean,
know, and
maybe
have
not
them-
to include.
to
as a-
include
right.
them into it, because
They
they,
may choose not to participate, and that's fine, but include because.
include, but one of the things
Because
wasn't,
they're growing also.
they're growing and they want to
Right.
grow their educational part of it. The one
Yes.
thing is though, that this is, it's not, based on recovery.
Recovery, right.
It's not based on recovery.
It's,
But they do want to do an intervention, so I
Yes.
think that it's only fair as a stakeholder in this,
mhm.
that they're called
Yeah.
into it too. How do, how does everybody feel about that? Linda,
Works for me. Fine.
Yeah,
Bert,
Fine.
John,
Sounds very good to me.
okay,
yes,
and Veronica,
yes,
So, so the first thing we would do is we're gonna ask that Jericho work this wording into to an RFP. And we get the RFP ready to go. We're not gonna put the RFP out until we have a meeting. I would like to set a date with you guys to try to get a meeting together for, with the stakeholders. Who we believe the stakeholders could be on this. And then. And make it a two-part meeting, and the second part, we invite. The others to come in on the conversation. And others being, as stated. Teen center, I mean, not teen center, sorry. Our house. Boys and Girls Club. All the schools. Daycare facilities.
New school, all those guys.
Yeah, I said all
Lighthouse,
the,
Yeah,
yep, all the,
Lighthouse.
yep, all the
Yep.
schools.
would they be called providers of youth services?
Sure, we can
Yeah,
call them in,
that's,
but we're just calling them
Yeah.
in, right? That's just for our meeting. And we would also like to have, any of the youth sports programs
mhm,
and the churches.
yes,
Um,
can't exclude them.
oh, and the Dreamland,
Mhm.
because they have a huge theater group. Right?
Yep.
Yep.
Which would, so. Let's see, we meet tomorrow with the Board of Selectmen and we make our presentation in regards to the letter on the request. I think we have a better idea. And, on what as we present, and it's gonna be better in numbers. That were there about this additional request, and we do understand what they've asked FinCom, has the recommendation FinCom made. And we're gonna work towards that recommendation. I do agree with Joanna and I thought that the process is. Backwards, but that's okay, backwards to what we've normally done, but. And make it very clear, I think one of the key things tomorrow night is I'm gonna make very clear is this process. We have refined it to be a very clear and accurate process.
Mhm.
And so I really want to make sure that everybody has a very good understanding of that as we go into it. And we're gonna go ahead and get this RFP written. I would like to have a date where it works for everybody, that we can invite the stakeholders. And the community members. So could everybody look at their calendar right now?
Yep.
And see John, you're back when?
I'm on the island on Thursday. I hope.
You hope, yeah. Bert,
I'm just down here enjoying the sunshine.
oh, be quiet. How long are you there for?
I'm coming back before Daffodil Festival.
Oh,
I'm not sure we should do this strictly in person. I think we need to have a hybrid because a lot of people aren't going to be able to physically attend.
No,
We'll
I
get
know
more
that.
participation with hybrid.
Right.
Linda, we're gonna do it hybrid for the whole organization, but I think. As many of us that can be present,
Mhm.
I think it has more validation to what we're doing.
Right.
And so that's why I was sort of asking when he was gonna be back. So looking at the schedule that everybody has in front of them.
Mhm.
Or your calendar, could somebody come up with a date.
How soon?
And wait, I could see something. Jason, we see that you're out there. Do you have any questions for us?
I have to. Do I have to unmute him?
No,
No.
You know, mute yourself.
no, I don't think so. I might follow up with you, but I was just curious about the request that's coming before the select board tomorrow. And so you guys did talk a little bit about that, so I appreciate that. But may just want to follow up with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So you were curious about the new request we've made.
Yes, yeah, and I
Okay.
saw that's up on the agenda for tomorrow, so I thought I'd tune in.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Any questions, just reach out.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
So how soon do we want to pull this meeting together?
I think the sooner the better, because everybody's gonna get really busy. And,
Is it possible for next week?
I mean,
No.
I just got,
If we're talking about getting other people at this meeting, no.
Okay,
well, I wouldn't be so adamant about that, because people know about it, that know that we're looking to
Well,
this.
you've got a large group of people you want involved in this thing, and there's no way they can plan less than a week away. I don't think that's fair to everybody.
I wouldn't assume it either.
I mean, at least 2 weeks from now, so they can make arrangements.
okay.
Today is the 20, today's
14th.
14. What's today's two?
The last week of March there somewhere.
Okay, so the thing is Tuesday, we only have available to us our mornings
On Tuesdays.
And
And
Thursday.
Thursdays.
and Thursdays. How about March 29th, which is a Wednesday, guys? That
Doesn't
gives
work
us.
For me, I'm in the hospital that day.
Oh, John, boy, what's going on, Bert? You all gonna be okay?
Well, I don't know, they've got to stick needles in my back to see if they can get rid of the pain.
No,
Let's go to a
Um,
Thursday, then. Thursday, the 30th.
no, that doesn't work because we need Ann available.
Monday, the 27th?
I have meetings all morning on that day. I'm supposed to.
We can't do the 28th in the morning.
How long will it last?
Right,
Wednesdays are great for me.
yeah, Wednesdays are the best for Ann. Because, she doesn't have any other requirements, and I have a feeling, this is gonna be a big discussion. I mean, it's gonna be a pretty heated
Oh.
discussion tomorrow night. It was a heated discussion the other day. It's gonna be. a heated
We'll
discussion.
get to the end because we're gonna run out of time, but.
Dorothy, Dorothy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Don't
it's
rush.
fine, go ahead with
Don't
Wednesday.
hold on, John, hey, John,
I just won't be
John.
there.
Okay.
John,
I'm just,
I love-
I
okay.
just took a phone call. What am I, are we motioning to adjourn?
no, we
No.
are coming up with a date,
We're
and I
getting
just
there,
wanted to
John,
let you know
hopefully.
that your conversation was being heard, sir. And I didn't want your conversation to be recorded as it was. We're looking at the date of March 29th. Bert would not be able to attend because he has a previous engagement. But I think that if we can meet that, March 29th gives us, Bert, if you had questions, if you could get them to me, that would be great. Before that time,
What time is the meeting gonna be?
In the morning?
I think we'll probably try for the morning.
What
Because,
night?
because all these programs have programs in the afternoon.
I think we should not start at 9. I think we should start a little bit later to get people into their offices, like 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere in there.
10 o'clock?
People are in their office at 8:30. I'm getting phone calls from people at 8:30 in the morning.
But you can't count on that. They need to get settled and into their offices for this.
Well, I think that it would be personally. I feel that the second part of this group that we're gonna ask is gonna have to leave according to, and we don't know if it's a half day of school, so we should check that to see if it's a half day of school. Because if it's a half day of
Every
school,
Wednesday-
then.
Every
then-
Wednesday's a half day, I think, isn't it?
No, not everyone. There's one Wednesday a month. That's a half day of school.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
It was
So I
every
think-
Wednesday.
Every
Is it-
Wednesday?
I thought it was every Wednesday.
No. I think it's only once. I don't have any children in the school
I know.
district any longer, first time, the last couple of years, so
Yeah,
I think it's one day a month on a Wednesday.
right. So if we do the morning, 9:30 to.
I would like to do
noon,
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock,
9 to noon.
9 to noon?
Yep.
And that
I'm
way. if it is-
opposed to 9 o'clock. I'm opposed to 9 o'clock. They have to get organized and get in. And I don't think that's fair to do them at 9 o'clock.
They've managed to make our other meetings here for 9 o'clock. I don't think that Fairwinds opens its doors at 9 o'clock. Health Imperatives is doors open. You can get anybody after 8 o'clock. I know that 8:30 is the opening time for NAMI. So
Are we just talking about those three groups? Or are we talking about this massive group?
we're talking
They'll
about
come
doing
later.
those guys first for an
Okay,
hour.
fine.
And then
I was
in-
thinking about the massive group.
No, and then bringing in the other participants afterwards. I think if they have a 2-week notice that they're gonna be doing this, they can work around their schedule if they want to be a member, you know, a
Mhm.
participating member of this conversation.
Mhm.
Remember,
Um,
Lepre himself can't do it at 9 o'clock. He's told us many times he can't do that.
But Lepre himself
He's
does
got-
not run
he's
his
got-
education program, and he has other people that are doing the education within his board. I
Right.
don't think that the
Somebody
education
could be
program
there.
is where his
He has a
strong
board
point
now
is.
that a board
Yeah.
member can make it.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
So where are we then? Are we on the 20, we on that Wednesday, the 29th at 9?
We are on
Those
March
guys?
29th.
Okay.
Okay, John, you want to make the motion?
I make the motion that we have that meeting.
I
I
second.
expect I can be there. I hope, maybe in person, I hope.
Okay, that would be wonderful. So we
But
have a motion.
I can't go to the hospital for shots the way you can.
Okay. So we have a motion from John, and we have a second from Veronica. So, John, Veronica,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Linda,
I,
awesome. Hey, can I make a statement, guys? You know how we're supposed to like call on everybody? I appreciate sometimes that we can carry on meetings without having to call each other, and we can be respectful enough to hear each other. And it be a continued conversation
Yes.
versus us having to wait, like we can do feedback. So thanks, guys, because I think it makes it run a little easier. And we can feed off each other's input at that point in time versus it being like, oh, wait, you gotta wait to be heard.
Right.
So thank you, everybody, for also being respectful upon that within that scope of us being able to run our meetings. So not all the times is it appropriate, but on these kind of conversations, I think it's great. So I think that we've covered everything. Is everybody's gonna be there tomorrow night?
Yes.
Linda?
are we there or are they on Zoom? I forget what they're doing over there. I think they're doing hybrids over there.
They're doing hybrid, but if you can be there, I think it's gonna be better that we're there. And that I'm positive that that's what we are, because the other day I was told 4:30 and I was told at the police department and it was at 4 o'clock and I had not gotten an invitation to the FinCom meeting.
All right, so tomorrow we're talking select board, right?
And
Tomorrow
that
is
should be
select board.
5:30, correct?
Select board
It's
is at 5:30.
It's
Right.
5:30 and it's hybrid, and I think we posted it, so I think it's best we're there.
Mhm.
And that I think that,
I'm afraid I'll be in the air, so I don't think I can be there.
well, that's okay, but Bert, if you can be there, that would be great via Zoom.
If someone could just send me the Zoom connector, that'll be great.
Okay, I'll have Ann send you the Zoom connector. Okay. I think it's gonna be very important. We're gonna make the first 2 presentations, then it's important that we begin our presentation. Anybody that has feedback or feelings about this, write it down. Because you have to get up and speak, but write it down so you know like what your key points are gonna be. If somebody else doesn't carry it over in their response, be prepared to give your response to it. So that we can get them to better understand. I think we were sort of hit unexpectedly with the feeling we got at FinCom. It really felt like,
Blindsided.
well, it felt like they had already made a decision before we showed up.
Yeah.
didn't even wanna, there was nothing you could say. And it's the first time we've ever in the RFP process been told that we need to have the stakeholders with us to come forward to ask for this money. And I was like, oh, that's the process. That isn't the process. It's never been that we've had, you know, the food pantry and
Right,
a safe place and, you know, small friends come to a meeting with us to say, this is what we want this RFP. We want to ask you for this funding. That's never been what we've done. We've always gone forward and said, we're looking for funding and we want it, but they wanted the stakeholders at the table and they kept saying, well, we don't see the public school here. And we're like, well, it's not the public school, it's everybody, but the public school are the ones that made this so obvious. You're the
Right.
ones that put it on the front page of the paper.
but technically they probably were right, because with what you've done here, we've already solicited the stakeholders. So we were with this, going to them with the stakeholders' information. With this,
No, because we've never had to ask them for money with
Right.
the stakeholders behind us. When we've asked for an increase in money,
right,
I've never had the people there to say, you have to do this because we need the money.
They were always invited. Most of the time, they never showed up.
No, but when we went to ask for increases.
but when you've
yes.
asked for increases, you've had grant applications that would justify wanting that increase.
No, I asked for the
No?
increases before we started the
Oh,
process. the
before,
last time.
okay, okay,
Before they were all in.
okay.
So that was what was, it was a little,
Mm.
it felt. I don't know. It didn't feel comfortable.
Are you ready for John's motion now?
Huh?
Are we ready for a motion to adjourn?
If you're ready for.
Waiting you, John.
You have to go and shut it off. John,
Oh, yeah.
wait, he has to do this,
Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
John? Are you making a motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, John,
Aye.
Bert,
aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Veronica,
Aye.
Dorothy, I. Bye, guys, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Batten down the hatches.
I know, right?